Hello and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favourite ships in the game, as well as have a few honourable mentions. Now these aren't the best ships in the game, not the most powerful ships I have, anything like that. They're just the ships that I enjoy using. I will often use them a lot. Either they do lots of damage or they're just fun to watch or use in fleets for whatever reason, whether it be watching them blow stuff up. They do good damage, they have good support roles or whatever. They're just ships that I really enjoy using. But before we get into it, I'd just like to ask you to please subscribe, share, like, comment. I've grown a lot in the past little while since I've started this channel just under 2 weeks ago, and I would like to keep that growth going hard and strong. I'm aiming to get to 50 subs because then that will let me live stream. So that's the first milestone. And once I get there, I'll look into a few other things as well, maybe making some content on other games and stuff like that, which I will put a poll up or something like that to see what people want to see. I might make a specific Discord channel for this channel or server rather, as Discord server for this channel and stuff like that. So please help me out, I massively appreciate it, and let's get into it. So starting with honourable mentions, I will say now all the top 10 ships that I've picked are in my collection on this account that I use to make most of my videos and name the channel after. Dreadhawk, it's my main. It is a season 4, end of season 4. The season finishes in 5 days of making this video, and then I'll be into season 5. My main account has the 2 honourable mentions that I've picked mainly because they're not on this account, but also because they're a little bit like, they're not as favourite as my top 10s, even though I do really like them. So first up is the Guardian. I love the Guardian. It's pretty cool. I do like how it's got healing. I'm not so sure about its AA capabilities. I haven't really got to test them much since I've had issues with my main account, with the binding to Game Center and all that kind of stuff. It's been a bit of a pain. So I haven't really played that a lot recently, and I'm trying to get that sorted. And when it does, hopefully very soon, I will make a video on the Pioneer system or the hub as well. But yeah, back to it. The Guardian, I like it mainly because it has this like situational awareness thing, which reduces the hit rate from missiles, and it has some upgrades there. And I like it sort of as like a mid-row tank that can provide some healing support to the rest of your fleet. To me, that's just cool, and I like it also. It looks pretty cool as well. It's got a fairly decent design on it, and it's got missiles, and I just have a thing for missiles because of their explosion animations. I love watching things blow up. It's pretty cool. The second honourable mention is the Xeno Stinger. This thing is an absolute beast. If you have it, use as many as you can. Its S for firepower is definitely well deserved. It carries 4 energy-based UAVs that monster things, and for 6 command points, it rivals destroyers in the amount of damage it does. It's legitimately insane. So yeah, I really like that. It's fun to just have frigate monstering enemy fleets. My third and final honourable mention is probably going to get some odd reactions, but it's the FG300. I really like this ship, particularly the armoured variant, just because it's a nuisance for people to take out. Like, it's very expendable, very cheap to make. You get it right from the get-go. I've got 45 research tech points in this thing because I do. 3 seasons of not too many other options have left me with this. I like just being able to field a massive number of frigates and stick them in the front or middle row to just protect other ships for just long enough to annoy people. they're not going to hold on for long. They're not the tankiest frigate in the world. But it's just fun to see how much they can slow people down. And I will also probably make a video on base defense tactics and stuff, which the FG300 is very, very, very good at defending your base, because you can have 30 of them for less than 100 command points. And just a quick hit now, if your base's defense hangar is full and you have 40 plus fleets of a single ship, then the enemy fleet has to stop every single time they destroy one of these fleets of one and move on to the next. All the while the rest of your fleets are still shooting it, so they're still putting out damage. It just loves to slow down enemies and be a nuisance. And as a fan of guerrilla warfare tactics in this game, I just really like it, but it is by no means very, very powerful. So that's it for honourable mentions. Clocking in at number 10 is the Cirrus aircraft destroyer and the AC721 dual-purpose assault ship. I put these two together. It's the only instance in this video that I actually have two ships that are tied, at least for the purposes of ranking. It's just because, to me, they both do similar things. One carries 2 fighters, the other carries 2 corvettes. But other than that, they both carry some very important aircraft and corvettes, fighters and corvettes, and they just play a very vital role in many of my fleets, as I love to use certain aircraft that I have included in this ranking as ships, because they perform as good or better than some of the ships in the game. So yeah, these are just very, very useful. Having these hangars maxed out really pumps your damage up tremendous amounts, and it definitely explains why having an aircraft swarm is definitely the meta, especially when it's destroyer based and with support of massive carriers. So yeah, that's number 10. Number 9 is the Mare Tranquillitatis. This is my favourite, mainly because of just the fact that it's a small frigate with missiles. I do also, and perhaps prefer, the pulse cannon type, which is really good. Its AA actually works, so it's one of the few instances in the game where the ship-based anti-air does well. Of course, it's not going to stop a whole swarm, but it does do well. But there's something about this ship. It was one of my first frigates. It does okay damage, it's nothing stellar. It's not quite on the same terms as the Rallient, and definitely not on levels such as the Xeno Stinger or any destroyer for that matter. It's fairly solid damage for a frigate compared to many other frigates. It's just cool, really, for me. I used it to win some very nice battles, but all the way back, all those many seasons ago, in Season 1, where I'd hide in an asteroid belt while everyone else was using their cruisers and stuff, as they did, and when someone would dare enter my asteroid belt, I would have 900 command points of frigates and destroyers just waiting there to hunt them down, and they would never withstand it. And it even got to a point where this thing's damage got very high, and I would use it as my main sort of anti-cruiser ship, just because its damage is high enough on its missiles to punch through moderate to lightly armoured cruisers and heavily armoured destroyers, as its damage can get up to about 80 or 90 from memory. So yeah, that's number 8, the Mare Tranquillitatis. No, that's number 9, sorry, not number 8. Number 9 is the Tranquillitatis. Number 8 is the Carillion. All frigates so far, surprisingly, well aside from the Guardian at the start, but I do like the faster ships. Anyway, the Carillion, I don't have the special variant on any account, to my absolute dismay. I've got 35% on here, and I've got like 75% on my Season 8 account, Hawk114. But yeah, I don't have it, so I haven't got to test it out for myself, but from what I've seen and felt from it tanking the bejeepers out of me, it's pretty good. But even just this one, the base recon type, it's very evasive, it's very fast, it tanks well, it can tank very well, it's even got reasonable anti-air abilities. The fact that this only triggers when aerial units are targeting it makes it very useful, particularly against pirates. Even its anti-air doesn't like destroy the enemy aircraft, but it does chip in, often doing more than most other ship-based anti-air does, which is usually pretty close to absolutely nothing. So yeah, I do like this fast little speed beast. I do believe that the FG300 Recon is faster, but I do like this just because it's probably better in fleets. It's front row, this evasive maneuver strategy is very useful. This triggers when it gets to 20% HP, boosts its evasion an enormous amount for quite a while. And then it's front row, so when that evasion still fails and it gets knocked down to 10%, it will just retreat into the middle row and just be there to either come back home after the battle or soak up some extra shots when the enemy fire moves into the middle row, which is pretty handy. And also they have a very, very high chance of being recovered as salvage. They have a very high evasion, which is the third type of evasion out of evasion, the dodge rate, emergency evasion strategy on front row command systems, and then emergency evasion to get out of there when you are about to get blown up. So all of these forms of evasion is very good on this ship, and yeah, I just really like this little frigate, which can be underrated by a lot of people at the start or even late game when the special type becomes more prominent. People can often overlook this, but don't, because it serves me very, very well. Number 7 is the Nomad. Primarily the support type, because it's just got a lot of healing. Its healing upgrades are amazing. You can get a lot of RTB cooldown off and pretty good effectiveness boosts on it. Strategy isn't really necessary usually because your back row is not going to be tanking, and if it is, you've probably lost, particularly if it's a frigate. Something like that might be more useful on a carrier or something when Callistos are shooting it, but it's not really worth it on your support Noma as such. Of course, if you've got the points, go for it. The AA type, as far as I know, it sadly doesn't work. I wish I got to test it more. I will probably have to wait till next season because I am being zeroed 2 to 3 times a day at the moment, which, yay, lovely. It's really not fun. But yeah, I do like this thing. It's super good early game. It's very good against pirates, all the rest of it. And yeah, siege type is also just a beast. It's useful in every single siege fleet, skirmishing outposts and mining platforms, particularly in like when your unions are at war. This thing is extremely useful for guerrilla warfare, and you can often pair the support type and the siege type with something like the FG300 or Carillion, and for less than 200 command points you can make a pretty good skirmishing siege fleet to take out mining platforms and outposts without losing anything really. And if the enemy does catch you after you're moving at 1,000 miles per hour, then you can retreat and you won't lose anything really. And even if they do get you while you're like AFK or something, you're gonna get all these ships back in like not very long at all, a few hours tops, depending on how many you're fielding, because they're just very cheap, they're expendable, all useful, and healing just allows you to keep up with the damage done by outposts and stuff, which will take out an unpleasant number of your frigates, but with healing, you will sit on 95+% the entire time, especially if your front row is evasive and dodges most of the shots anyway. Then hallelujah, you're good to go. Next up is my first ever fighter. Yes, the Strix is the first fighter I ever got way back in Season 1, from one of those 150 boxes that is like a special event and everything takes extra long to research. Yeah, that's where I got my Strix from. Back then, it was solely an anti-ship DPM fighter. It just blasted ships apart with lasers. But as the game has gone on, it has received a little gift, which is anti-aircraft support, which is very, very useful. I'm pretty sure that this was the same time, or at least around the same time as when the Spore got turned from the best to okay. So the Strix sort of fills a similar sort of role to the Spore now, in the sense that they both defend your fleet from aircraft. They don't go and hunt aircraft actively. This is still pretty good. It's very useful. I love this shit because it will go out and it will start dealing damage, and then once damage is starting to be dealt to me, this thing will come and help me out. It has been very, very, very useful, particularly in recent times. I always use 10 of these every single moment I get the chance to, because there's no real reason not to. It's got good hit rate, it's got good damage, it it targets aircraft, it does good against every type of ship. Yeah, there's no reason for me not to use it. It's my first ever fighter, so that's stuck with me pretty well. As you could probably guess by my decent memory of the conditions of which I got it. For those of you who might be in Empire of Man, which is the union that my main is in, I got this way back when Tyrann Dominion was still playing. So yeah, that's the Strix, my favorite fighter. Number 5 is perhaps the most overpowered thing in the game, or at least the most overpowered Corvette, aside from maybe the Nebula Chaser Pulse variant, I believe, or the CVT 800. But this thing still does way more anti-ship damage than either of those. The Stellar Defender, my 5th favorite ship in the game. It's not technically a ship. I don't remember how I got this, or when I got this rather. I definitely know that I did not know what its potential was at the start. It did good damage. It had heavy damage on its torpedoes, decent weapon profile, good upgrades. But yeah, this thing at gold does over 10,000 damage per minute, and you field 2 of these in a 8-point AC721. So all of a sudden your AC721 is putting out like 25-30,000 DPM, because that also, but the AC721 itself buffs these as well, which reduces their RTB and increases their damage and hit rate and all the rest of it based on the upgrades you put on. It becomes absolutely ridiculous. This thing turns whatever it wants into scrap metal, aside from other aircraft. But even like from time to time, its self-defenses will kick in a little bit, but not enough to destroy whatever's hunting it, but enough to chip in and maybe make the life of some anti-air things easier. But yeah, this thing, it's also just fun to watch, like this big blob sort of just flies over with torpedoes and puts big holes in things, and you can always see the percentage dropping whenever these things put their barrage down. It's just really cool. And then the situational awareness system is kind of a little bit useless because it's not very often missiles are shooting at it, but it's a nice to have. It just adds even more to the ship, to the Corvette that seems to have pretty much all the damage in the world. Number 4, I've talked about this a lot, CVT 800. It's extremely good anti-air and very good anti-ship as well. You can see 5,472 is what I've got on its AA, and 5,348 on its anti-ship, which is amazing. You can field 2 of these, well, you can field a maximum of 15 of these actually, which I more often than not do because this is my main anti-air. It does a really good job at it, and it's just really good. I love its diversity. It's extremely cheap. It takes like 3 minutes to build one of these things, so you can build 10 of these in half an hour, which is insanely absurd. And if your fleet gets wide, then you need to defend your base. Spend 10 speed ups and you can get all 15 of these to top up your base defense system if you need to, or to slam into some emergency fleet, and there you go. It fulfills every role perfectly. It's energy weapon, so it doesn't even get stifled by armor very well. It's just, yeah, really, really, really good. Back to the frigates for number 3 on my list, the Rallient. I love this ship. It's got torpedoes, they're indirect fire. This thing monsters through frigates and does well against destroyers too. And it's not completely useless against heavier armor as well, just because it's still putting out damage, and you can't really complain about that. For 4CP, this thing does an amazing job. It's got very good variants as well. If you have any of its variants, it's probably worth checking them out and using them. It's even like slightly tanky considering it's a DPM sort of frigate. It's got high evasion. You can boost its chances of not being hit, reduce the hit rate of enemy missiles and torpedoes to a maximum of 15 and 25% respectively. That's pretty good. On top of its innately higher evasion as a frigate and its boost from its propulsion system, there's just nothing to not like about this ship, really. If you're using asteroids, which I am 99% of the time, I would highly recommend this thing. It's going to do well against most of the things that can actually attack you. And since I also do guerrilla warfare a lot, having cheap ships like this that do good damage and can also sort of dodge a few hits is also really useful. So yeah, number 3, the Rallient. It's also one of my first frigates on both my season 8 and this account. So yeah, it's just, I don't know what else to really say. Indirect fire torpedoes that look cool when they blow things up. There's plus crits. Yeah, I like it. Finally, something a little bit bigger, destroyer. One of the easiest destroyers to get is the Winged Hussar. It's really, really, really good. It can get like over 10,000 DPM. It does get overlooked in later game. I never overlook it. It's always good to have as many destroyers and frigates as you can in my mind, because bigger ships are just too slow for me and they get countered easily due to their low hit rates, and big ships tend to do better against big ships. So yeah, I don't have it maxed out, sadly, but it does do really good damage. It's got its Carillion heavy battery, which helps chew through heavy armor very well with its really high damage. And also its missile system is reasonably high damage. It would chew through most armor, but it's also got physical armor penetration, which is also really good. I don't know how much armor it penetrates or disables, as it says in the text, but it's always done well. It's done well against every ship that I've really put it against, and it hasn't quite contested with the DPM that some other destroyers can put out. It's definitely not the highest, but it's up there as one of the more diverse. It can do good damage against everything, which is not something that every ship can do. Some of the ships with really high DPM are very ineffective against dodgy sort of ships, which are the ideal for tanking, because having a massive shell or a massive laser is useless if it doesn't hit its target. Likewise, having a bunch of really light cannons that pepper light ships is not going to do anything when it just bounces off heavy armor. So having a well-rounded ship like this with a lot of missiles that can penetrate armor and have a good damage number, and then just a heavy armor piercing cannon with both with pretty good hit rates is just really good. And it's only 6 CP, so it's also very affordable. Its build time isn't too much. It's just a genuinely good destroyer, and don't overlook it because it can do better than you might expect. So now to my number one favourite ship. I'm going to give you a moment to guess what it might be. CV3000, Eternal Storm, ST59. I'm not even going to try and say that other battlecruiser that I got from the agreement. You get a few ships from the agreement in node recovery. A bunch of destroyers here. It's some light cone, Connemara Chaos, Callisto, Jaeger, Io, Cass, KCC, my destroyer collection, my frigate collection isn't as big, but I've chosen a fair few frigates thus far. All my fighters and corvettes, reasonable collection, not any of the best stuff, except for I've got probably the 2 best corvettes. Not to try and flex, but I can't really say I don't have the best stuff when I've got some pretty good stuff. My number one favourite ship is the Taurus. It's got massive damage for an 8-point destroyer. It's insane. It's got evasion bonuses. I don't think it innately has them. No, you get upgrades for evasion bonuses. So that's always handy on a front row off tank. It can get a pretty good armor value, which is also super good. Lots of physical resistance, but it's just got massive energy damage potential. Its experimental pulse cannon clocking in at like 500 damage with shield penetration. So this is sort of like the Carillion battery for the winged Hussar, except probably better in every way because it shoots far more regularly, every 2.75 seconds when it's upgraded, which is insane for a cannon with very high accuracy and that amount of damage. It just helps monster through armor, and then it disables enemy shields as well. So it's not even like the innately low amount of energy resistance most ships are going to have against it is even going to do anything, because it's just all going to be shut down. And then it has a whole bunch of good rapid fire pulse turrets. These things, their anti-air does function fairly well. Of course it's not decimating fleets, but I've seen my Tauruses do multiple thousands of damage against aircraft that target it, which is very, very good. So boost that hit rate when you get around to it. They're always shooting, which is very useful. Very high accuracy. Their energy weapons, a reasonable damage number as well. It's just awesome. And then you can upgrade its damage even further in its energy system, which gives you a total of an extra 25% damage and an extra 15% cooldown, which just makes this cheap destroyer. It does take a little bit more time to build and costs a little bit more than some of the other destroyers that I like, but it's just its damage and tankiness far outweighs that. Pair it with some healers and you've pretty much got a decent siege fleet in just alone there. A few of these and some siege frigates and a few healers, and you're good to go. I use this in my front row of every fleet that I build that might come into enemy fire. If I'm building a tank fleet, I use these. If I'm building a more rounded fleet with some, if little tanking potential, then I will use these. I will use these in DPM fleets. I will use these every opportunity I can because I absolutely love it. And I got this in season 5 or 6 of my very first account and season 3 of this account. So there was an extremely long time where I was doing everything in my power to get it, and I finally got it, and it has not failed me, and its variants are also amazing. So if you have those, then you're just super lucky. Yeah, it's definitely by far my favorite ship, and I love it. So yeah, those are my favourite ships, at least that I know of. I'm not a big fan of bigger ships just because they're really slow. I prefer fast. I'm much more of like a stealth ops, guerrilla ops sort of person. I like the speediness, I like the dodging, and their damage is still rivaling that of destroyers and stuff, at least per point, and they're cheaper and stuff. So that's why most of my things are destroyers and frigates with a few aircraft, because aircraft are just overpowered compared to some of the other options in the game at the moment. They are the meta, and I didn't pick them because they're the meta, it's just they're naturally good and they sort of fit my style, and that sort of seems to be why they're so good. After all, having a fleet that is much faster and has more maneuverability has a lot more control in the field than a really slow fleet, because a slow fleet sort of just, it fights whatever is put up against it in whatever order it's put up against. So evasive tanky fleets can often hit it first, and then a whole bunch of DPM fleets can come in from the sides and rear, and this super slow heavy fleet, as tanky and high damage it might be, will still be held up for a while on this evasion based tank fleet, and your DPM will not suffer for using frigates and destroyers in any of your DPM fleets, because it's amazing. So yeah, those are my favorites. Shout out to Delta357. He or she, I believe it's a he, requested for me to make this video. I've got a few more coming. Any suggestions are very welcome. Again, I please ask you to subscribe, like, share, all the rest of it. I am aiming to get to 50 subs, and from there I will start expanding and evaluating my options, and hopefully one day I will be able to give back to everyone what they give to me. So yeah, there we have it. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.